The battle for UW is upon us. Washington is on their way to Wisconsin. It's time for a crossover.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into a Locked On Crossover edition. I'm Roman Tomashoff. I'm the host with Locked On Huskies. That man right there, that's Ryan Harings. He's the host with Locked On Badgers. Thank you for making this your first watch or first listen of the day, as we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. And just quick reminder to all you everydayers out there, wherever you get this podcast, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, wherever that might be, make sure to click that subscribe button, click that little bell as well on both of our channels so you never miss when we post a new show. Plus, if you have the audio only side of things, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review, as it does help us out a lot. With that being said, Ryan, we've got a tremendous show coming at all our everydayers out there today. We're going to play a little game at the end of Your Team Wins If. We're also going to talk about some names to know on both sides, including whichever the hell quarterback Wisconsin might want to use this weekend. I don't know. Are we going to see 4? That seems like it's well within the range of possibilities at this point in time, but Washington is making this trip out to Camp Randall. Your first impression of this game is
huge. So I'll say this: like this Badgers team, for as bad as the season has gotten, and by the way, Roman, man, it's about time we've had a crossover. Like I'm excited for this one. I'm excited for this one. Coming out of the bye, this Badgers team has been obviously objectively terrible this year. It's been an awful football season, but there are some flashes against Oregon. They played maybe their best game of the year, right? Going up to Autzen 21-7. That was a 7-0 game at halftime. This defense is playing well. This game is massive because these last 4 games, it still feels like Coach Fickell, who I think will be here next year. I've said that consistently from the beginning of the season till now, but they have to get something going to hold this recruiting class together, to keep boosters engaged, to keep NIL money kind of engaged, to go into the offseason with some momentum. It feels like these last 4 games for the Badgers are enormous. And Washington's really good, right? That trio on offense, the defense is salty. But this does feel like a spot occasionally where teams from the West Coast coming over to the Midwest, I think there's going to be some rain. There's going to be maybe some issues there. This feels like a game the Badgers could potentially keep close. And I think it's massive for Wisconsin to play well.
So I couldn't agree with you more. And that's the thing that I'm most concerned about is this travel, right? Where we look at Jedd Fisch in his first season at Washington last year, 0-7 away from Husky Stadium, 0-5 on the road. And then this year, it's been a lot better, but it hasn't been without its flaws. Where you look at the Maryland game, you go down 20-0, you're able to find a way to come back and win, which is awesome. But then the Michigan game, you really struggle there. And just, you mentioned the weather. It's not like, Seattleites aren't like unfamiliar with the rain and everything, but it's still just a different story playing, especially in Wisconsin, in Camp Randall in November. And, just speaking of recruiting, Jaden Pettit, love watching that guy's film. Would love to see him come up on an official visit to Washington, but that's beside the point. We don't have to talk about that today. But when I look at this game, I think you bring up some great points, because I was really impressed with Wisconsin's defense in that game at Autzen, where there was some more weather involved there too as well, but it's just a physical group. And now that Washington is able to have John Mills back at left guard, Carver Willis back at left tackle, those are 2 guys that I really point to in this game and say, when they were out, Washington's offense didn't look the same. Yeah, it still had, a nice day against Rutgers, a nice day here, a nice day there. But having both those guys in the mix is just critical to the success of this unit.
Yeah, I think you're dead on, right? And the weather itself, it's not that certainly you play in Washington, you're going to get rain, you're going to get all types of weather, but it's more so that it tunes the game to what the Badgers are successful at, which is stopping the run and somewhat running the ball. The biggest bugaboo for Wisconsin all season has been throwing the ball and stopping the pass. Well, if there is weather, you're limiting those aspects of the game. And again, it's certainly nothing Washington isn't capable of playing in, or something they're unfamiliar with weather, but it just limits the areas of the game where the Badgers have struggled, and it accentuates the areas of the game where the Badgers have been better, which is their run defense, which is their ability to run the ball a little bit. So I think weather could play a decent factor here. And listen, Washington is the favorite, and they should be, right? Offensively, they have weapons that Wisconsin just can't replicate. Defensively, they have athletes that Wisconsin doesn't have. They should be the favorite, a 6-win team. But again, college football is weird, right? You come across the country, early game, you maybe aren't taking Wisconsin as seriously as you should because of the record, because of the way they played. Listen, college kids do this all the time. They overlook opponents. Right. You could have an interesting game. And I think if it's an interesting game, by the time the third, fourth quarter comes around, you and I have both seen enough ball that a tipped pass the wrong way, a fumble the wrong way, things can flip interesting games quickly.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more there. And one of the things that, I want to hold on to when it comes to knowing what Jedd Fisch and the messaging is from this coaching staff heading into a game like this is you just found yourself ranked in the college football playoffs for the first time, since 2023 and everything, which is a really nice sign. But it's not just Wisconsin. It's who else is coming down the pipeline in terms of not overlooking, but just understanding the opportunity that you have this week and what's ahead of you, because it's not just Wisconsin this week. It's Purdue next week. And then it's UCLA the week after that, leading up to a potential just massive showdown with Oregon at the end of the year. Because I think you bring up a great point that, college kids might look at that and say, oh, they could, certainly overlook this game against Wisconsin. But you also have to understand the opportunity that you have ahead of you, because all three of these games for the next 3 weeks could be overlooked games in that same stretch. So that's why when I've talked about this game is I kind of like the fact that the weather's involved here a little bit, where I've been intrigued by Wisconsin's rushing attack, where I was doing some numbers the other day. I had no idea they were last in the Big Ten in yards per carry at 3.2 this season. That really stunned me. And Washington's run defense, for the most part, has been really solid this year, with a big rotation of bodies that hasn't necessarily been great at getting pressure on opposing quarterbacks. But in terms of stopping the run with just 6, 7, sometimes 8 defensive tackles that they can rotate in at any point in time, I think that that's one of those things where if Wisconsin does want to run the ball 35, 40 times, I don't think it might play into Washington's hands per se, but I think that this UW defense, especially with the athletes that you talked about on the outside and cornerbacks like Takario Davis and Ephesians Prysock, who just thrive in one-on-one coverage, I think that they have the bodies in the front seven to compete with Wisconsin in terms of the running game.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I think if you're Washington, you're looking at this, and I know we're going to talk quarterbacks maybe next segment, but you're looking at this Wisconsin team and saying, we're gonna play man press on the outside. We're gonna man up. We're gonna bring a safety down the box. We're gonna make some unproven quarterback. Again, we'll get into who that might be coming up. We're gonna make some unproven quarterback make throws in tight windows in the weather, and we don't think you're gonna do it. And we think with our personnel, maybe stacking the box, you're not gonna be able to run the ball. I completely agree. It's just when you look at Wisconsin, and the rushing numbers don't bear it out. They've been better recently. The Oregon game, they ran pretty effectively. They had some nice drives in the Michigan game. The first one, they went down the field and scored. The running game has gotten better. Where it started this season was disastrous. This offensive line missing its left tackle, then lost its center, flipped 4 people to different spots. The original right tackle became the left tackle. There's a new center again. It started to gel a little bit. And this is almost where the season is broken up into micro seasons. The first season was figuring out the offensive line. And then the Badgers went through the bear of Iowa, Ohio State, Oregon. I mean, that's just a monstrous schedule. They're coming out of that with the offensive line being a little better. And I think they maybe found a running back in getting Atuka, who played pretty well against Oregon. But you're still right. I would still give the advantage to Washington defensively. It's just that's the one thing that Wisconsin, I think, could hang its hat on. I want to ask you this really quick, big picture. How's the Big Ten feel now to you as a Washington?
I love this.
Okay.
I love the Big Ten. I was saying this on a reaction show I did the other night, talking about the college football playoff rankings. And, it sucks. RIP Pac-12, that whole thing. But in terms of just some of the new things that the Big Ten offers, not just in terms of, new opponents like playing Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State more often. I think all that's a lot of fun, but the opportunity to have a true coast-to-coast conference with the opportunities that it's opened up for everybody in terms of just the university, we're getting to do a crossover show with you, with some of our other tremendous hosts around the Locked On Network in the Big Ten, like talking with somebody who's been a tremendous guest on Locked On Huskies a few times, is former Michigan tight end Jake Butt, who does a tremendous job with the Big Ten Network. Just having more opportunities to do stuff like that compared to what Larry Scott and George Kliavkoff did to kill things like the Pac-12 network and exposure and all that sort of stuff for the conference. It is truly wonderful to be here, which, kind of brings us perfectly to what we really need to talk about is the Big Ten still has a lack of quarterbacks. And you could say that right now, maybe 4 times over for Wisconsin. I don't know. And we'll get to that right after a message from our friends over at Supply House. And the opening whistle blows on a new repair. Get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order parts today and see them on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punching projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Need parts fast for a project? Supply House's next day delivery. Talk about a game changer. The part finder tools and 3D schematics could save you hours on jobs where every detail matters. Join the free Trade Master program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. All right, Ryan, I'm just going to ask you this point blank. Who's starting at quarterback? Like, please tell me, because we need to do some names to know here, and I don't know.
I think it's a great question. I think it's Daniel Neal. The quick answer to how Wisconsin got here: for the third year in a row, Wisconsin's portal quarterback coming in has been lost to injury. It was Tanner Mordecai, then it was Tyler Van Dyke, now it's been Billy Edwards. Billy Edwards has, I think, like 7 passes this season. They brought him to be the starter. He's been hurt. He's not going to be back, I don't think. I think they're going with Daniel Neal. So the last couple of weeks, it's been Hunter Simmons, who last year was a backup at Eastern Illinois, a FCS program. They brought him in, and he's just been he's really struggled. And I don't want to be too critical of him. I just don't think he's ready for this moment. Daniel Neal started earlier this year. He was the guy who came in for Billy Edwards, started last year at San Diego State. I think they're going to pivot back to O'Neal. So for Washington fans, the type of quarterback you're going to see, kind of the scouting report on O'Neal: undersized quarterback, mediocre arm, but pretty mobile, tough as hell. Like, he plays quarterback like a linebacker a little bit, which I don't think you should at that size. That's part of the reason he got dinged up this year. But he is a guy who will move the pocket with his feet. He is a guy who RPOs, rollouts, some option stuff. He can do a little bit of those things. And if he can limit some of the shots he's taken, I think he can do a few different things with this offense. The name to look out for if you're a Washington Huskies fan: I think the Badgers will also sprinkle in their 4-star freshman, Carter Smith. He's also a mobile quarterback, was originally committed to Michigan before they obviously flipped to Underwood. He's an interesting name. Not a great thrower yet, but another guy who can move the ball, RPOs, quick timing routes. So I think you're going to see those two. I think you're going to see Daniel Neal, Carter Smith. Objectively, I think the Badgers are just looking for a spark. They're just looking for somebody that can give them a little mobility, another layer offensively. I wouldn't expect anything tremendous from those two just because of what we've seen so far and their youth and experience. But I think you're going to see Daniel Neal, Carter Smith line up for the Badgers.
So I'm glad you mentioned Carter Smith, because when we got a chance to talk to defensive coordinator Ryan Walters during his Tuesday press conference, I asked him about preparing for multiple quarterbacks when you don't know who it's going to be. And I kind of wanted to formulate that question around Carter Smith, because, correct me if I'm wrong, this would be his first college snaps now.
That is correct. Yep.
Okay, so that was, and I was really interested with that. And his answer was, like it's obviously really difficult when you don't know what kind of player that's going to be. But if both those guys are very similar, and you do want to sprinkle both of them in just to see what the freshman has, plus, getting the veteran in there to do a couple different things for you to lead the offense. I was going to be really unfair there for a second, and I decided not to do that, where I was going to say, push the ball downfield, but also the rain is going to play a factor in that. So I'm not going to go that route. But I looked at those two guys and I said, okay, yeah, I think it might be similar enough. And for Washington's defensive line, which hasn't done a good job of creating havoc plays, which is one thing this coaching staff has asked for, I'm curious to see how they might want to utilize, some read options, some RPO stuff like that, just to try to keep the timing off when it comes to what this pass rush has wanted to do, where with Ryan Walters, is, I'm sure Badgers fans and the whole Big Ten knows full well, he loves to go the 5-down bear front sort of look and just try to get consistent pressure in the backfield, which Washington, again, has just not been able to do at a very high rate this year. So I'm very curious to see what the Badgers want to do offensively to just try to combat what this defense is going to throw at them.
It's a great question. I think you're going to see a lot of conservative play calling, try to run the ball, because you're not going to want to put too much on the plate of either young quarterback. Daniel Neal, while he has more experience, was a freshman last year when he started his game. So he's a sophomore. Carter Smith hasn't played. I think if you're Wisconsin, in an ideal world, if you're Wisconsin, you want to put yourself in favorable down and distance situations, run the ball in first down, get 5 yards. 2nd and 5 is navigable. If you're in 3rd and 8, 2nd and 7 against this Washington defense that has athletes on the edges and a really competent coaching staff going up against a young quarterback, I think they're just going to play a lot of underneath coverage. Neither quarterback's going to push the ball down the field, and it's not going to be easy for Wisconsin to move the ball, which again is where we come back to the fact Washington has a lot of edges in this game, from the ability of their coaches to scheme things up, to the athletes they have on the edges, obviously to the offensive side for the Huskies that we're going to talk about next. Probably there's a lot of advantages for Washington here. which is where you almost need something miraculous is the wrong term, but Wisconsin probably needs to be +1 or +2 in the turnover battle. And if that happens, I think this is a game, but I think they need that.
Oh, I absolutely agree. And that was one of the things where Washington did a really good job against Illinois. They were able to generate a pair of interceptions on Luke Altmaier. And so that brings to one name that I love in this segment because I just love getting his name more around the Big Ten. And that's safety Alex McLaughlin, because this Ryan Walters defense, it's built on not just these big fronts, but a safety who can act as a linebacker and just tackle in the middle of the field. And that's what Alex McLaughlin has done. He's been such a versatile piece for the Huskies, where he's lined up, according to Pro Football Focus, like literally everywhere along the defense. He's played outside linebacker, slot corner, outside corner, inside linebacker, box safety, free safety. Like, he's done a little bit of everything. And he's one of those guys who in this game, like, he had 12 tackles a couple of weeks ago and has just been the most consistent force on this defense all season long. And in a game like this, he's one of those guys where I feel like Ryan Walters is going to want to do what he's most comfortable with, which is putting him everywhere a little bit and just having him wreak havoc from several different spots around the formation. I always like to cheat and go with a name that's a little bit less known before I get into the big three guys, because as we do kind of flip the script and talk about Washington's offense, the names that everyone needs to know are Demond Williams Jr., Jonah Coleman, and Denzel Boston, because they have been three of the best players in the country at their respective positions this season. And those are guys who I look at this game, whether or not Jedd Fisch is going to lean on them heavily. Obviously, the weather might affect how they're used, but like, especially with a guy like Denzel Boston, he's coming off a career game, 10 catches, 153 yards, and 2 total touchdowns with a receiving and a passing score against Illinois. And they're guys who, no matter what defense is on the other side, and Ohio State fans know this, Michigan fans know this, no matter who's on the other side, I'm going to be confident that those guys can get the job done, because they've shown they can do that all season long.
Yeah, I love all three of those players. I mean, all three of them are just incredible athletes. I'm curious, where have teams gummed it up a little bit for Williams at quarterback? I almost feel like, and you tell me if I'm wrong, because this is me looking on the outside in, I almost feel like if you can upset the rhythm a little bit, he certainly can push the ball downfield, but I think some of the quicker passes kind of set a lot of that up. Wisconsin does have a pretty good pass rush. It's been maybe the one consistent part of this defense. Secondary's been a struggle, so I think they got to try to get to him quickly. Where have teams gummed it up for Williams in this offense?
It's been exactly what you're talking about, the defensive line and getting consistent pressure, because you look at Washington's 2 losses, Ohio State and Michigan, that's exactly what happened. It's the super talented defensive fronts that both those teams can put out on the field were able to consistently just wrap up Dezmen. And it's not just clogging up passing lanes. It's not letting him get outside. Like, I look at that Michigan game where those edges were just, especially without Carver Willis and John Mills, who I was talking about a little while ago, they just did not let Demond Williams get to the edge. He only had 3 design runs in that game and finished with 5 carries because of 2 sacks. So that's the biggest thing for me, is whatever it looks like, if you do want to try to spy Demond Williams, he's shown that he can be more athletic than most linebackers because Arvell Reese exists. And I think that's one of the things that has just given the Huskies some troubles this year, because when that's not happened, when there's not consistent pressure, he's shown to be an amazing decision maker who is going to complete a very high percentage of his passes.
Yeah, and I think it's a 14-4 touchdown interception ratio for him on the year. Really good decision maker, none of which bodes well for the Badgers. Like, if you want to throw a couple in this game, would be totally cool with me. Really, really good take on the spying aspect of it. The Badgers against Oregon, if you want a defensive name to kind of look out for Huskies fans who obviously know ball, if you want a defensive name to look out for, Mason Posa, freshman linebacker, 4-star.
Can I stop you for 1 second?
Oh, please, let's do it.
Mason Posa, when he was coming out of New Mexico a couple of years ago, he was someone that the former UW coaching staff offered, and I watched his film. I said, "Oh my God, this guy is absolutely incredible." So I'm so happy to hear you say that name. Please continue.
And you were dead on. By the way, your evaluation of him was dead on. He, 4-time state high school wrestling champion, played everywhere in high school. He's got the start against Autzen. A true freshman, didn't enroll early because he was winning his 4th straight high school wrestling title. He looked awesome. I mean, he looked phenomenal against Oregon. Led the team in tackles, had a pass breakup all over the field. And if you are to look at a player who may be spying Williams, it probably would be Posa, because he has the athletic profile to do it. Still a freshman. So you're going to be able to manipulate him a little bit with RPO action, movement. Oregon did that eventually. But he's really talented, man. And he first started against Oregon, he was incredible. Probably the best player on defense for the Badgers. One other guy you want to keep an eye out, Huskies fans, is Mason Reiger, defensive end. He is very disruptive as a pass rusher. You can run at him a little bit, but in 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, he's been a guy who's consistently gotten pressure for Wisconsin. So I think that's the key, right? Try to get Williams a little uncomfortable, as tough as that is, because he's really, really talented. But get him a little uncomfortable, spy him with Posa, and then you're probably going to try to unleash a guy like Mason Reiger on 3rd and 7.
So I'll give you 2 more names then. I'll give you one on each side of the ball, and I'm also going to go with a pair of true freshmen here. Offensively, I want to talk about Dezmen Roebuck here for a couple of seconds. This is a guy who has just very quickly developed into one of Demond Williams' top targets. He's second among all true freshmen in the Big Ten in receiving yards this season, and is just somebody who has been able to find ways to win at all 3 levels of the field. So if Washington does want to push the ball downfield a little bit in this game against this Wisconsin secondary, by the way, Ryan, Washington and Wisconsin are separated by 0.1 yards in terms of passing yards allowed per game this season, which I thought was very interesting. Just want to throw that out there. So I really like what Dezmen Roebuck has been able to do. The way he's able to create separation on just with his routes has been so much fun to watch. And then on the defensive side of the ball, freshman Zaydrius Rainey-Sale is somebody like Mason Posa, is a super fun athlete to watch. He's played in 3 games so far as he was coming off a torn ACL that he suffered at the end of his senior season in high school. This is one of those guys who, as he continues to develop against the run, he's going to be one of the best linebackers in the Big Ten. 6'3", 225, all kinds of length and athleticism. His first step and explosiveness is absolutely insane. He created a turnover in the game against Illinois where he dropped into coverage on 3rd and 20 against Hank Beatty and was able to just time his hit so well that the ball popped right up in the air for an interception for Takario Davis. As he continues to grow, he's still 17 years old and is for another couple of weeks, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. That kid's going to be a lot of fun to watch. And I love talking about young linebackers, but we also like talking about scenarios where our teams win. So we'll do that on the other side of the break. And we'll get there right after a message from our good friends over at FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Ryan. Wisconsin gets their first Big Ten win if...
Oh man, this is tough. No, I got it. I got answers. By the way, it's just shocking to me still that we're hearing phrases like that. Wisconsin gets its first Big Ten win. I mean, we're in November, for gosh sake. Wisconsin fans are not used to this. It's tough. I think I mentioned part of it. They have to win the turnover battle, which Wisconsin's not been great at this year. They're 17th, I think, in the Big Ten in turnover margin. Washington's significantly better than that. I do think there are a couple scenarios here, though, where you can make this a close game, and close games often lead to upsetting losses, right? So yeah. I think the Badgers' rush defense is pretty legit. If this is a weather game, that front 7 for Wisconsin plays like they did against Oregon, which, again, was also a weather game for the record, I think they can control the game script a little bit, keep it close. And then there's a chance where Washington, who, you know, if you just look at some of the pass pro metrics, isn't at the top of the Big Ten. I think they've given up 18 sacks this year. That Wisconsin pass rush, I think, could do a few things to make Williams uncomfortable, which maybe leads to one of those interceptions. Again, I'm kind of leading this in a direction, but I think it's a Wisconsin rush defense creating some disadvantaged spots for the Washington offense, weather impacting the throw game, and all of that leads to a close game going into the 3rd or 4th, where a Wisconsin team that maybe gets a little juice from a new quarterback, maybe moves the ball a little bit the way they did against Oregon, is able to win a game late on a field goal, last second drive, something like that. I think that's the game script. You keep it close through the weather, the running game in the front 7, and then you try to win it late with that running game.
So you're zigging. I obviously have to zag. I will say, in fairness, where I do like the Wisconsin pass rush. I think they've done a lot of nice things this season, but like I've said, with the Washington having a healthy left side of the offensive line now in John Mills and Carver Willis, I think that's a really important thing to note. And then let me ask you this too, because when I look at Wisconsin's front 7, like I said, I do see a lot that I really, really like. But one thing I'm curious about, because I think it's very important when talking about Demond Williams and what Washington wants to do with him, just no matter what happens when they have the ball, any kind of scenario, how are they at defending the read option?
They're okay. So they're better than they were last year. They have more athletes. They really upgraded the athleticism in the front 7, both at the linebacker spot and on the defensive line. But Demond Williams is still going to get them occasionally with that. And to your point, they have given up outside contained to mobile quarterbacks, which is something Williams will also take advantage of. Like,
Yeah.
I don't have confidence that this team will shut Williams down or that Huskies offense. So I think it's a very good question, and it's not something the Badgers will completely be able to shut down.
And that's one of the reasons that I want to talk about that is because when Washington is at its best, it's getting Dezmen Williams on the move, and not just as, a runner, but it's as a passer as well. They like to move the pocket for him. And again, now with a healthy offensive line, you're able to do that a little bit more, and you're able to run more bootlegs and more just different actions to get him out and run where it's okay. Maybe all of a sudden it shrinks the read from 4 to 2, and it's not like he can't go through a full progression. But when it's just that much easier for him to say, all right, 1, 2, not there. Okay, I can take off and run and get 6, 7, 8 yards. That's just one of those things that makes this offense so dangerous. And it's what is really exciting about Dezmen Williams, because if you ever ask Jedd Fisch about just what he brings to the table, he'll always say, yeah, he's probably the fastest guy on our team, one of the best athletes on the field, if not the best at any given time. And this is one of those games where, again, we've talked about the weather a lot already. If there is some weather, getting Dezmen Williams out of the pocket and just into space, he's been so impressive at making guys miss. I'm not sure how much of the Illinois game you might have seen, but it's not just making guys miss. He is surprisingly physical for his size on that 3rd and 18 that he picked up late in the second half, where he just ran through an Illinois defender. He can do a little bit of everything. And it's really exciting because he's obviously there's a lot more than just a quarterback that comes down to a successful offense. But it's very clear from just Jedd Fisch's 5 years as a head coach that Dezmen Williams is the perfect quarterback to run his scheme. And he just amplifies everything and just takes it up to another level because of what he can do, especially behind a fully healthy offensive line.
Yeah, I love him. All full disclosure, I love Dezmen Williams. Absolutely love him. I picked before the season, before I realized the depths of where Wisconsin would reach, which I still don't know if we fully hit the bottom of it. I had Washington winning this game. I had this in my early season picks, partially because I just think he's tremendous. I think he's a tremendous quarterback and athlete. And I think you made a good point to the weather. That doesn't just impact the offense. Like, defenders trying to get out in space against Williams are going to be on skates a little bit. And he's just tremendous. I don't have a ton of confidence that especially this Badger secondary that has been roasted at times, is going to be able to hold up against guys like Boston with Williams throwing those passes, which is why that pass rush is so important. But Washington's tough, man. They're a really good team. I had them winning this game before the season started. I outlined my path for success, but I still think Washington obviously comes in and takes care of business. They're just too talented.
Yeah, that's kind of where I am, where I don't make pre-game predictions because I've been the world's worst jinx, and I'm on record of that of several years.
Should try this time, see if it holds up.
No, I'm going to go back to my preseason prediction where I also had Washington winning this game. And one of the big reasons is exactly what you're saying, where Dezmen Williams is such a big factor in this. But the one thing that I really want to see, to just continue our theme here of your team wins is I want to continue to see the defense create takeaways. Wisconsin has thrown 10 interceptions this season, which is tied for the most in the Big Ten. And I'm sorry to have to remind you of that. But my
head on a loop.
But I look at it and I just see what the Huskies bring in terms of the athletes in the secondary that you're talking about. It's not just those guys on the outside. It's not just Alex McLaughlin, who I've talked about at safety. It's another freshman in Ryland Dillard-Allen, who's been a real playmaker on the back end at safety. It's Rashawn Clark, who is just fully taken over as a former 4-star recruit, as the nickelback, as a redshirt freshman. Those are also guys who can create those havoc plays on the back end. And one thing that I've talked about a lot over on Locked On Huskies is over the next 3 weeks, Washington has several opportunities to get into positive game scripts early and let the secondary create and take advantage, where, like I said, Wisconsin and UW are separated by, yes, I said it that way on purpose, are separated by 0.1 yards in terms of passing yards allowed per game this season. But I look at what Washington can do in terms of creating these takeaways. Tacario Davis has had 2 other interceptions called back on penalties this year, one of which was absolutely ridiculous. I don't even want to get into that. But I just look at what they can do on the back end, and I think that if you are able to find a way to get a lead early, with Wisconsin averaging 5.4 points per game in conference play this season, you have an opportunity to maybe take a couple of chances here early on where if you don't feel threatened down the field, and I don't even mean that from a terms of what Wisconsin brings to the table from their passing offense, but just what the weather might look like, you're going to have to throw the ball at some point. And I think Washington has the bodies to take advantage of that.
Yeah, I think it's well said. I mean, again, this is an uphill battle for Wisconsin. You're welcoming a 6-win team in. Wisconsin fans are jealous of 6-win teams at this point. So I think people know that this is an uphill battle, but I think the line is still a little lower than I had a couple people reach out and kind of wonder, I thought this would be a 14, 17-point line, something like that. I think it reflects the fact that there's travel involved. Teams are coming off a bye. By the way, sometimes teams coming off a bye don't play great. Like sometimes you lose some rhythm and momentum. So I think there's some variables here with the weather, coming off a bye, the travel, that you throw all those together and you get a new quarterback, and sometimes you get a new quarterback bump. I think all those things together create some variability here, which is giving people a little bit of a pause.
So I couldn't agree with you more there. And Ryan, before we get out of here, I think we both need to give ourselves a pat on the back, because we did a squad show a whole while back, and we got some comments over on the Locked On Huskies side of things where you were called a hater, and we're talking about, beating a low-class team, which I completely agree. By the way, it was after Washington beat UC Davis by about 60 points. And one of the things that one of my wonderful everydayers out there said was, you can tell he has a thing against Roman. So the fact that we're able to get through this without, jumping through the screen and throw hands at each other, I think that we deserve a round of applause for that.
No, I love it. Yeah, I saw that comment when you shared it to me. I absolutely have a thing against Roman. It's rooted deeply in jealousy of a team that is ranked as 6 wins in a competent passing game. So I am being petty, and yes, I do have a thing. It is true and it's real, and I'm glad we were able to find some kind of common ground here.
I'm so proud of us for all of that. Ryan, this has been absolutely tremendous. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to all you everydayers out there for tuning in. And just a reminder, again, wherever you're getting this podcast, subscribe to both our channels, wherever that might be: YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We're there. We're everywhere. We're updating these channels with new content every single day. So please make sure you click that subscribe button, click that little bell as well, so you never miss when we post a new show. Plus, if you're on the audio only side of things, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review, as it does help us out a lot. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you on Friday.